Michael sat in his car, the engine running softly, his eyes fixed on the house in front of him. It had been another long day at work, and the weight of responsibilities pressed heavily on his shoulders. But it wasn't the usual stress that troubled him now. It was something deeper, a restless feeling stirring within him, as if his soul was calling out for something more. It was the kind of feeling that couldn't be explained, something beyond his grasp, but it was real. Across town, Sarah stood in her kitchen, her coffee cup untouched, her mind drifting. The house was quiet, everything in its place, but there was a stirring within her spirit, a quiet whisper that something was missing. She had worked so hard for everything she had, but why did it feel like she was meant for something more? And in that moment, a still powerful truth began to break through. The truth that has always been waiting for them, for you. Chosen one, do you hear it? The voice wasn't audible, but it was unmistakable, a call that resonated deep within the heart. You were not brought here by chance. The struggles, the quiet moments of doubt, they were all part of the plan. God has been preparing you. And now, right where you are in the middle of your everyday life, He is calling you to something greater. You may not see it yet, but your path has already been set. The restlessness, the feeling that you are meant for something more, it is not random. It is the call of your destiny, the whisper of God's plan unfolding in your life. As Michael stepped out of the car, as Sarah felt that quiet nudge in her spirit, they were stepping into something far greater than they could understand. God had been leading them here through every moment of confusion, every setback, every quiet whisper, preparing them for the divine purpose that was about to unfold. The door was opening, and they just like you were being called to walk through it. Michael's car rolled to a stop in front of his house, the engine quietly turning off, but the tension in his shoulders didn't ease. His eyes scanned the familiar suburban neighborhood, the tidy lawns, the brick homes with white picket fences, the neighborhood kids playing in front yards as their parents chatted on porches. The world seemed to be moving along, just as it always had. And yet for Michael, everything felt off. There was a weight in his chest, a pressure that had built up over the last few weeks, a feeling of being trapped. Another exhausting day at work, another round of meetings, emails, and phone calls that seemed to go nowhere. It had always been like this, working late, missing family dinners, struggling to keep up with the demands of life. But now something had shifted. The routine felt like a cage, and Michael couldn't shake the feeling that there had to be more. Was this it? Was this all there was to his life? He opened the door, stepping out into the driveway, his eyes momentarily drifting to the sky where the last light of the day was fading. There, just beyond his front yard, his kids were playing in the grass. Their laughter pierced through the heaviness in his mind, but it didn't quiet the storm inside him. His son kicked a soccer ball toward him, and Michael caught it without thinking. A smile tugged at the corners of his mouth, but it felt hollow. Something had been stirring inside him, a whisper in the back of his mind that he couldn't ignore no matter how hard he tried. There was a purpose in his life, something more than this, but he had no idea what it was or how to find it. For years, he had followed the path laid before him, work hard, provide for his family, keep everything in order. But now that path felt like a dead end. What if he was meant for something greater? The question lingered as he stood there watching his children play. What was he supposed to do with this feeling? Was it a sign? Or was he just tired, overworked, lost in his own thoughts? A few miles away, Sarah sat in a quiet diner, a half-empty cup of coffee in front of her. The small cafe smelled like fresh-baked bread, and the soft hum of the old jukebox filled the air with a tune from the past. The diner was sparsely populated this evening, just a couple of elderly couples sitting in booths, a man reading a newspaper at the counter. Sarah had always liked this place. It was her escape, her haven. But tonight, even here, she felt restless. The peaceful hum of the diner couldn't drown out the voice in her head, the growing unease she couldn't shake. She'd had a good day. Her work at the local community center was rewarding, her kids were healthy, and her marriage was steady, but none of it felt right. It was like she was living in a world that didn't quite match the one she was supposed to inhabit. Everything was fine on the surface, but deep inside she felt disconnected, like something essential was missing. Her mind drifted to moments from the past week, small, seemingly insignificant occurrences that now felt like signs. A chance conversation with an old friend who spoke about destiny and purpose. A dream she couldn't quite remember, but that left her with a sense of urgency. And then there was the quiet feeling that had been following her around, the sense that God had been leading her somewhere, but she didn't know where. It wasn't like the other times she'd experienced doubt or uncertainty. This was different. This was a whisper from her spirit, an unmistakable nudge. But what was it telling her? Was she just imagining things, or was there truly a call that she had been ignoring? She stared at her reflection in the diner's window, trying to make sense of the thoughts swirling inside her. She could hear the soft conversations of the other customers around her, the clinking of dishes in the back, but none of it seemed to matter. Everything felt distant, disconnected. She had spent her life building a foundation of stability for her family, but now she wasn't sure if that was enough. There was a restlessness inside her that wouldn't go away, a yearning for something deeper. God, she thought, what is it that I'm meant to do? Why does it feel like I'm standing on the edge of something, but I can't see what's ahead? As the days passed, the subtle tension continued to grow. For Michael, the questions began to invade even the most ordinary moments. He'd find himself staring out the window during a meeting, his mind drifting, wondering if there was more to life than this. On weekends, he'd go to the grocery store with his wife, trying to keep up appearances, but the small signs were impossible to ignore. The way the sun shone a little brighter when he was outside. The way people seemed to look at him differently, as though they saw something he couldn't. And for Sarah, the signs only grew clearer. She'd noticed little things, the song on the radio that seemed to be speaking directly to her, the random encounters with people who offered words of encouragement or wisdom as though they were part of a bigger plan. Even her daily routine felt different, as if the ordinary was suddenly filled with hidden meaning. Every step she took felt like it was leading her somewhere, though she had no idea where. The pull was undeniable, but neither of them knew what it meant. It was like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing that something life-changing was about to happen, but unsure if they were ready to take the leap. This quiet building tension carried through their lives. The weight of the unknown, the longing for purpose grew heavier with each passing day. Michael tried to shake the feeling, convincing himself that it was just fatigue. Sarah brushed off the doubts, focusing on her family, her work, her daily routines. But deep down, they both knew something was happening. Something beyond their understanding, beyond their control, was beginning to unfold. And while they couldn't see it yet, they were slowly being guided towards something bigger, something they were meant to embrace. As the days drew on, they couldn't deny it any longer. The world around them was shifting, and so were they. The time was coming, the door was opening, and soon they would have to choose whether or not to walk through. Michael's car hummed softly as he drove home, the engine a constant reminder of the day that had drained him. The sun dipped beneath the horizon, and a cool breeze rolled through the air as the lights of the city flickered on. Yet despite the familiar sight of his suburban neighborhood, everything felt different. It wasn't just the exhaustion from a long day at work, it was something deeper. Something in his spirit was stirring, a quiet, persistent tug that wouldn't let him rest. For the first time in his life, Michael felt that what he had been doing all along wasn't enough. It felt as though his soul was being called to something greater, something he had ignored for far too long. He had always worked hard, followed the rules, and taken care of his family. But now, sitting in the stillness of his car, the weight of it all seemed so insignificant compared to this strange, inexplicable pull. He couldn't explain it. He didn't know what it was, but he felt it deep in his bones. God was calling him. He had been chosen, and his life was about to shift in a way he couldn't yet understand. Michael tried to shake off the feeling, but it clung to him like a whisper from deep within, urging him to listen. The question that had always been on his mind, why me, was no longer one of confusion, but one of awakening. His hand hovered over his phone, the message from Sarah waiting to be answered, but his heart was elsewhere. There was something more to this moment than just his daily routine. As he pressed the gas pedal, his thoughts turned to prayer. soft, quiet words in his heart, asking God, "What do you want from me?" For the first time, he understood that his life wasn't just a series of events or decisions, it was a divine plan. And whether he was ready or not, it was unfolding before him. Sarah had always believed in God, always trusted in his plan. Yet in this moment, she felt like she was standing on the edge of something she couldn't fully comprehend. She had prayed countless times for clarity, for guidance, but had she ever truly listened? Had she ever truly trusted that God's plan for her was unfolding, even in the quiet moments you were chosen? Sarah, she heard in her heart a whisper that echoed with certainty. God had a purpose for her life, something far beyond the daily struggles, beyond the role of mother and wife. She was being called, but how could she step into it? What would it mean to follow the call? The more she tried to ignore it, the louder the pull became. It wasn't fear she felt, it was anticipation. God was preparing her, leading her, guiding her to step into a destiny she had been blind to. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she silently prayed again, "Lord, what is your will for me?" And in that moment, she knew that she had been chosen. God wasn't waiting for her to be perfect, he was waiting for her to trust, to step out in faith even when the way ahead was unclear. Michael and Sarah, though miles apart, were experiencing the same stirring within their souls. The calling had come, and though they couldn't yet understand the magnitude of it, both felt it was not an accident. The signs were there, the restlessness, the growing tension, the quiet whispers of God's purpose. Their lives, once so familiar, now felt like they were moving out of alignment with the person they had always been. Every part of their past, every doubt, every struggle was preparing them for what was coming next. The weight of being chosen wasn't easy. It was uncomfortable, it was overwhelming, and it was unexplainable. But deep down, they both knew this wasn't just about them. It was about fulfilling God's purpose in their lives, stepping into the divine destiny He had laid out for them. It wasn't about knowing every detail or having everything figured out. It was about trusting that God had been leading them all along, even in their confusion. They were not simply facing life's challenges, they were stepping into the role of the chosen ones, and the journey ahead would require faith, courage, and a willingness to follow where God was leading. The time for waiting was over. Now was the time to listen, to trust, and to step boldly into the purpose that had always been waiting for them. God was calling them, and they had to answer. Michael sat in his office, staring blankly at the papers in front of him, the weight of the day pressing on his mind. His thoughts were elsewhere, lost in the feeling that had been gnawing at him since he left the driveway that morning. The pull of something greater, something divine, had not let him go. Yet here he was at his desk with bills to pay, deadlines to meet, and responsibilities to fulfill. This isn't the time for all that spiritual stuff, he thought to himself. I've got a family to provide for. I've got a job to do. But even as the words left his mind, they felt hollow. The doubts began to creep in just as they always did. He wasn't a preacher or a prophet. He wasn't special. He was just Michael, the guy who worked at a desk job, went home and tried to make ends meet. Who was he to think that he had been chosen for something bigger? He could barely keep up with his daily life, let alone step into some grand divine calling. And yet the feeling persisted. No matter how hard he tried to focus on work, no matter how many times he told himself it was just his mind playing tricks, the voice in his spirit wouldn't quiet. The pressure of the responsibility was overwhelming. What if I'm not enough? What if I fail? Michael closed his eyes, fighting back the wave of anxiety that threatened to drown him. His life had been hard, sure, but hadn't it always been? Wasn't this the way life was? Work hard, try to be a good man, and keep going no matter what. He thought back to the past, the times when things had seemed to fall apart, when he lost a promotion he'd worked for years to get, when his marriage was on the rocks and he couldn't figure out how to fix it. Those were the moments that felt like failure, but now they felt different. He remembered the sleepless nights spent questioning his choices, wondering if he had made the right decisions. There had been times when he couldn't see the purpose in any of it. But now, looking back, he began to see something he had missed before. Could those painful moments, the ones he had cursed at the time, actually have been part of God's plan for him? Was the suffering, the disappointment all part of the preparation for the calling that was now on his doorstep. He was shaken by the thought, maybe this wasn't random. Maybe God had been shaping him for something even through the struggles. But how could he be sure? How could he trust that this divine calling wasn't just his imagination? Across town, Sarah was pacing around her living room, her mind racing. The tug on her heart had only grown stronger, and yet the fear she had been avoiding was now impossible to ignore. I've spent my whole life just trying to keep things together, she thought. How could I possibly step into something bigger? She sat down on the couch, her hands gripping her phone tightly as her mind replayed the moments when life seemed to fall apart. The job she didn't get, the friendship that ended abruptly, the nights when she cried out for clarity but only felt lost. At the time, she thought those were the worst moments of her life. She couldn't see how they had any meaning. Now, though, in the quiet of her home, everything seemed to be coming into focus. Those moments of confusion, the feelings of being abandoned, and the loss, it was all starting to make sense. Was that God's plan all along, she wondered? Had he been preparing me for something even through all the pain? But even as the realization settled in her heart, doubt followed. She had spent so long trying to hold everything together, to be strong, to be in control. She wasn't some mighty leader. She wasn't a woman of great faith, at least not like the ones she heard about in church. She was just Sarah, a mother, a wife, a daughter. How could someone like me be chosen for anything? She felt small, unworthy of such a calling. What if she failed? What if she wasn't capable of stepping into the life God had planned for her? The tension built inside her, the fear making her hesitate. Her life was busy, predictable. She had her routines, her work, her family, her quiet moments of prayer. But now everything felt different. Her heart ached for the truth that seemed just out of reach, and yet she was terrified to embrace it. What would it mean for her family? For her future? Could she truly step into the unknown and trust that God had a purpose for her? Or would she be another failure in the eyes of the world? For both Michael and Sarah, the resistance they felt was the same. The fear that they weren't good enough, that they didn't deserve to be chosen, was overwhelming. The call was there, unmistakable, but so was the doubt. Every step forward felt like a leap of faith into the unknown, and the world around them seemed to be moving in the opposite direction. While they were being called to something greater, everything they had known, work, family, comfort, was telling them to stay where they were, to play it safe. Yet deep down, they both knew this struggle was part of the journey. The fear, the doubt, the confusion, it was all part of the process. God wasn't calling them because they were perfect. He was calling them because they were capable of becoming more. The path ahead was not about certainty, it was about trust. And as they faced the resistance within themselves, they had to ask the most important question. Would they step forward in faith despite the fear? Michael stood in front of the mirror, his reflection staring back at him, but it felt like he was seeing a stranger. The weight of everything that had been building inside him, his fears, his doubts, the confusion seemed to come crashing down all at once. For the past few weeks, he had tried to ignore the pull. He felt the divine nudge that refused to let him go. He had told himself that it was just a phase, just the stress from work or the pressure from life. But now, standing in the quiet of his bathroom, something inside him shifted. His mind flashed back to the moments in his life when everything seemed to fall apart, losing the promotion he had worked so hard for, the tough conversations with Sarah when they didn't know how to fix their marriage, the times he felt like he was drowning under the weight of responsibility. He had seen those moments as failures, as setbacks that only pushed him further from the life he wanted. But now, in this quiet moment, everything clicked. He suddenly understood. Those painful experiences weren't failures. They were the very things that had prepared him for this moment. Every struggle, every hardship had been a step in God's plan. It wasn't random. It wasn't punishment. It was divine preparation. God had been working behind the scenes, shaping him, refining him, and now it was clear Michael was being called to something far greater than he could have ever imagined. The realization hit him like a wave, sweeping away the last remnants of doubt. He had been chosen not because he was perfect or because he had it all together, but because he had been made for this moment. Every hardship, every challenge, every time he felt like giving up, it had all been part of the process, and now he was ready. Across town, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea. The house was quiet, the kids playing in the living room, and yet her mind was elsewhere. She had been reflecting on the days when her life seemed out of control, the moments when she felt like she was losing herself in the chaos of family and work, the struggles with her health, the overwhelming guilt of trying to do everything perfectly, and the moments when she doubted her worth. She had prayed for clarity, for a sign that she was on the right path, but it never seemed to come. Until now. As she sat there, the quietness of the moment enveloping her, the weight of everything that had been building inside her began to shift. The voice she had been ignoring, the whisper in her spirit, grew louder. She understood in that instant that everything she had gone through had been part of God's plan. The doubts, the confusion, the fear, it was all preparation. She had been equipped with everything she needed to step into her purpose, and now finally she could see it. It wasn't about having all the answers, about knowing exactly what the future held. It was about trusting that God had been with her all along, guiding her, preparing her heart for the work ahead. The hardship had not been in vain. It had been the very thing that had shaped her into the woman she was becoming. And now, with clarity in her heart, she knew she was ready to take the next step. Both Michael and Sarah stood at the crossroads of their lives, the divine shift now clear in their hearts. The tension of the past weeks, the strain of resisting the call, had reached its peak. Now, with the breakthrough came the choice to step forward in faith, trusting that the path ahead would be guided, or to turn back, staying in the comfort of what was known despite the growing unrest. For Michael, the breakthrough came with a sudden clarity that he had been prepared all along. God wasn't waiting for him to be perfect. He had already equipped him for the journey. Every moment of his life had led him here. He could no longer ignore the call. It was time to move forward. Sarah, too, felt the weight lift as the divine purpose that had always been there revealed itself to her. She was not alone in this journey. God had been with her every step of the way, and now with clarity in her heart, she knew her calling was unfolding before her. She was ready to trust the process and step into the purpose God had planned for her. The tension that had held them both captive now dissolved into a quiet certainty. It was time. The emotional strain, the doubts, and the fear were now replaced with the knowing that they were being led. God's plan was unfolding before them, and all they had to do was trust and move forward. The breakthrough had come, and now the path to their divine purpose was clear. Michael stood at the threshold of his office, the weight of his decision pressing down on him like an anchor. It had been weeks since the divine clarity had struck him, the overwhelming truth that his life was meant for something greater than the life he had built. But now the time had come to act, and the fear that had once paralyzed him began to creep in. His hand hovered over his phone, ready to make the call he had been avoiding for days. The resignation letter he had drafted sat on his desk, and yet he hesitated. What if this was a mistake? What if I'm making the wrong choice? His heart pounded in his chest as doubt and fear clouded his thoughts. He had a stable job, a steady income, everything he needed to provide for his family. But deep inside, he knew God had called him to more. He had felt it in the quiet moments of prayer, in the stillness of his soul, and in the moments when the world fell silent. He had been chosen, and to step into his divine purpose, he had to take a leap of faith. Taking a deep breath, he closed his eyes for a moment, praying silently. Lord, I trust you. I know this is the path you've set before me. Help me take this step. He opened his eyes and with a final breath of courage dialed the number to his boss. As the phone rang, he felt a weight lift off his chest, replaced by a quiet, steady peace. His decision was made. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't without fear, but he knew it was the right one. The time for waiting was over. The leap of faith had been taken. In a quiet corner of her home, Sarah sat down at her kitchen table, her Bible open in front of her. The past weeks had been a blur of uncertainty, yet now, in this still moment, everything had become clear. The divine timing, the events that had been unfolding, the moments that seemed like coincidences, She could now see them as God's plan at work. There were signs everywhere, tiny miracles, confirmations that she was on the right path. She remembered the conversation she'd had with a stranger in the park, the way their words seemed to speak directly to her heart. The job offer that had come unexpectedly at the perfect moment, aligning with the passion she had long ignored. The way her prayer for clarity had been answered through a message from a friend. It all fit together now. She wasn't in control. She never had been. God had been guiding her, and she was finally beginning to understand. With a deep breath, she closed the Bible and stood up. It wasn't just about the steps she was taking, it was about trusting that God's timing was perfect. She didn't need to know every detail of the path ahead. She just had to follow the signs and trust that He was leading her. As she made her way to the door, a quiet smile spread across her face. She had taken the first step in faith, and already the path was unfolding before her. Days turned into weeks, and the signs continued to appear. Michael's faith was tested in ways he hadn't expected. Every new challenge seemed to be met with divine intervention. He met people who had been placed in his life at just the right moment, an old friend who offered him guidance, a mentor who saw his potential and encouraged him to keep going, even when the path ahead was unclear. Each encounter felt predestined, as if the universe was responding to the leap of faith he had taken. Opportunities came his way that aligned with his purpose in ways that felt nothing short of miraculous. Sarah, too, began to see the confirmation she had prayed for. The small, everyday miracles added up. The promotion she had been waiting for materialized just when she needed it, providing the financial stability she'd prayed for. A conversation with a neighbor led her to a new community that shared her faith and vision. Each step forward brought more clarity, more assurance that she was walking in alignment with God's plan. She wasn't just making decisions anymore, she was living out her purpose. The more Michael and Sarah stepped into their divine callings, the more they realized they were changing. The transformation wasn't always dramatic, but it was profound. Michael began to see himself differently, no longer just a worker in a cubicle, but a man with a purpose chosen to do something greater. He wasn't just building a career anymore, he was building a life that reflected his faith, his purpose, and his trust in God. His relationship with his family deepened, and he found a new sense of peace and fulfillment that had eluded him for so long. For Sarah, the transformation was equally profound. She no longer doubted her worth or the path she had chosen. Her faith had become a beacon of strength for others, and her newfound confidence radiated in everything she did. The way she spoke, the way she carried herself, it was different now. Her role as a mother, wife, and woman of faith took on new meaning. She saw herself through God's eyes, and that made all the difference. She was no longer seeking validation from the world. She had found her worth in Him. As the weeks turned into months, both Michael and Sarah began to understand the depth of their transformation. They were no longer the people they had been before. They had embraced their divine purpose, and in doing so, they had become who they were always meant to be. The world around them had shifted, and they had shifted with it, becoming the people God had chosen them to be. They were now walking in their purpose, empowered by faith, ready to face whatever challenges came next. They knew the journey ahead would not always be easy, but they also knew they were never alone. God was with them, guiding them every step of the way. And as they continued forward, they both knew the most important truth of all this was just the beginning. As Michael and Sarah took their first steps into the life they had been called to, they realized something powerful. The journey they had embarked upon was not just theirs alone. It was a path they had been walking all along, though they hadn't known it until now. And in that moment of clarity, they understood this wasn't the end of their story, but the beginning of something far greater. And so I invite you, chosen one, to reflect on your own life. Look back at the struggles, the heartaches, the moments that felt like defeat. What if those were just stepping stones preparing you for the life you were truly meant to live? What if every hardship was part of God's divine design, shaping you, molding you, strengthening you for the purpose He has set before you? This is not the end of your journey. This is the beginning of a new chapter. God has called you just as He called Michael and Sarah to walk a path of purpose. Your destiny is unfolding right before you, and all that is required now is for you to trust. Trust that the same God who has guided countless others through the trials of life is leading you too. You are already becoming who you were meant to be. You have been prepared for this moment, whether you realize it or not. The signs, the whispers, the quiet moments of doubt, they are not there to hold you back, but to push you forward into the greatness that lies ahead. Do not fear the unknown, for it is in the unknown that God's grace will be revealed. You do not need to see every step of the path ahead. You only need to take the first one in faith, trusting that He will guide you every step of the way. As you move forward, know this: God's timing is perfect. What you may see as a delay or a setback is actually His way of preparing you for the fullness of your purpose. Trust that every moment has been designed with you in mind. Your story is unfolding, and the best chapters are yet to come. So, chosen one, embrace this moment. Embrace the transformation that is taking place within you. You were chosen for greatness, and nothing will stand in the way of your divine purpose. Keep walking in faith and step into the life that God has always intended for you. The journey may not always be easy, but it will always be worth it. Remember, this is just the beginning. The path forward is bright, and you are ready. Step boldly into the destiny God has prepared for you. You are more than enough. You are His chosen one.